Hi boys, so I'm going to give this a go and see how we get on. This is an example of a grid on variation and hereditary and mutations. So the first thing I did was I put out all our learning outcomes. So describe the diversity of an organism, define the term species, distinguish between inherited and acquired variations, give examples of them, define the term heredity, define variation, on list of variations, and define mutations and lists of mutations and types of mutations. So the first thing I did was I just went back and revised stuff that I'd studied already. So remember in 5th year we spoke about the word taxonomy and what it actually was. So it was the study of classification of organisms, because we had so many different types of organisms, scientists had to classify them into groups. We know that the different types of organisms, we use the word diversity to describe different types of organisms. So I'm highlighting those keywords. So different types of organisms, and the key word is diversity. And then classification, that we're putting them into similar groups. So I'm just highlighting the word classification, and then I'm putting them into similar groups. So it'll make it much easier for scientists to study the different organisms. I know in 5th year we looked at the idea of kingdoms, and we divided them into 5 kingdoms, like animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, and monera. And protista, sorry. So now our basic unit for classification, I suppose, in terms of genetics is species. So this is really important. Like, we've always tried to divide our species definition into 3 groupings. So it's a group of organisms that they're capable of interbreeding and that they're fertile offspring. So really the key to this is that they're a species and that they're a group of organisms, and that they're capable of interbreeding is really important. But some organisms can interbreed and not produce fertile offsprings. So examples of those organisms would be like, you have a lion and a tiger mating, and they create an organism called a liger. You can Google it and look at it if you want, but that's not fertile. It's sterile, so it's not a new species. You might have a mule, like a donkey, and a horse mating. Or a recent one, I've put a link up for the Farmers Journal on this, would be like a goat and a sheep mating, and they create a geep, but they're not fertile either. So these grouping here are not new species. Okay, so key things for you to learn from that small section at the very start is, can you define taxonomy? That's the classification of organisms. Can you reference the word diversity, mean different types of organisms? We classify things to put them into groups that have similar characteristics. And this really new one for today, that is species, and say these 3 things. They're a group of organisms, they interbreed, and their offspring have to be fertile. If they're not fertile, it's not a new species, and we use the word sterile if they can't produce new offspring. Okay, I'll give you a chance maybe to make note of these, or make flashcards, make a note of our learning intentions, and then I'll come back to this area in a moment.